Learning to play the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game can seem like a difficult and daunting effort. With all the different cards, rules, and little complexities, it could almost turn someone away from the game entirely. However, Duel Academia is here to present all the rules to you in a cleanly read and visually assisted video series designed for absolute beginners to learn about Yu-Gi-Oh! With that said, take a seat and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! 101. Class is now in session. In today's episode, we will be examining the characteristics of a monster card, the types of monster cards except for pendulums, battling, and 4 types of monster effects. Monster cards are complex and made up of lots of little tidbits that come together and make each card. I'll try to do my best to make everything as digestible as possible, but keep in mind that you only need to get the general gist about monster cards, and then you can learn everything else more deeply through practice. Without further ado, let's begin with the breakdown of what makes a monster card. At the top, you'll see the monster's name. This is fairly self-explanatory, but some cards will belong to an archetype, such as Six Samurai or Burning Abyss. This makes it easier to group cards together that are related. Next to the name, we have the attributes. There are 7 of these: light, dark, water, earth, fire, wind, and divine. The latter is almost never used, but could be recognized as the attribute of the Egyptian god cards. The rest of them are used in certain card effects or have benefits depending on the archetype they belong to. Below that are a number of stars. These are the monster's level and can range from 1 to 12. These are key as they impact many things about the game, but mostly affect their summoning conditions. If the monster has a level 4 or lower, once per turn you can normal summon these for free in face-up attack position or face-down defense position. Face-down placements are also called a set. And contrary to the early anime, a player cannot normal summon a monster in face-up defense position. If the monster you're trying to summon has a level of 5 or higher, it will require at least 1 tribute to normal summon, which means you must send 1 monster you already control to the graveyard in order to bring that card out from your hand. Any monster level 7 or higher will require 2 of these tributes unless stated otherwise. Moving along, below the image we have the card's type. There are currently 22 of these types, listed here. These also group certain types of cards together and will help the most when building a deck, aside from an archetype mentioned in the name. Many different effects can be tied to specific monster types, and it'll take some exploration and experimentation to discover the many combos you can use. Some monsters have a second type, such as Gemini or Tuner, which is listed next to it. Most of the time, these are self-explanatory through the effects in the text box. We'll be examining these more in a different series. Below the types, we have the effect text box. This will list the monster's effects or flavor text, depending on the kind of monster. Below that, on the bottom right, we have the attack and defense stats of the monster. These detail how much damage they can dish out and how much damage they can take, respectively. We'll be going over that in the battle section. That's everything to know about monsters on the surface level, but there are also different varieties of these cards that are more easily identifiable by the color of the border of the card. The 4 varieties are normal, effect, ritual, and pendulum. We'll start with the normal monsters, also known as vanillas due to their pale yellow color. There's nothing special about these cards other than their flavor text, which don't affect the game. However, they generally have better attack or defense stats than other monsters of the same level. Then we have the orange effect monsters. These are the most common type of monster in the game, and perform different actions depending on certain conditions. There's a wide variety of effect types, and we'll touch on the 4 of the most common ones after the battle section in this lesson. Ritual monsters are a type of blue monster card in your main deck that cannot be normal summoned. They must be special summoned using a ritual spell card. Usually, this is done by using a specific ritual spell to tribute a number of monsters from your hand or field, whose levels add up to equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster. And then you bring the ritual monster out from your hand. The ritual card or monster may have other requirements or effects, but those will always be listed in its text. Lastly, we have the multicolored pendulum monsters. These are quite complicated, so their mechanics will be explored in a much later episode. Trust me, it's for the best. Now that we've covered the basics of monster cards, we'll move on to the most important use for monsters: conducting battle. As implied, battles and attacks can only be conducted during the battle phase. When you enter this phase, any monsters that you control that are in attack position may declare an attack on an opponent's monster, or on the opponent themselves if they control no monsters, which is called a direct attack. When attacking a monster, there's some things to consider: your monster's attack value, the opposing monster's battle position, and the opposing monster's attack or defense value. Firstly, your monster's attack value is always used for battle in an attack. If the monster you're declaring battle on is also in attack position, then both attack values are used. If your monster's attack is higher than the opponent's, their monster is destroyed and any excess damage is dealt to your opponent's life points. If both monsters' attack is equal, they're both destroyed and sent to the graveyard. Also, no battle damage is taken by either player. Some players may refer to this as crashing. If your monster's attack is lower or becomes lower than your opponent's, your monster is destroyed and instead you take any excess battle damage to your life points. Now, when the monster you're declaring an attack on is in defense position, your monster's attack is then compared to that monster's defense value. In the event where your monster has a higher attack than their defense, the opponent's monster is destroyed, but no battle damage is taken, unless your monster has a piercing effect in its card text. In the event where your monster's attack is equal to or lower than their defense, neither monster is destroyed, and instead you take battle damage equal to any difference in values. That covers everything about monsters, so we'll wrap up by examining 4 of the most common effect types that monster cards will have: Ignition, Trigger, Continuous, and Quick. For starters, Ignition and Trigger effects are Spell Speed 1. We'll go more in depth into spell speeds and chains in the next episode, but essentially this means that they can only be activated when nothing else is currently happening during the turn. Ignition effects are effects that require a manual activation. Cards with this type of effect will be preceded by phrases ending with colons, such as once per turn, you can, or during your main phase, followed by the cost, if any, which will end with a semicolon, and lastly, the actual effect that will be activated. In other words, you can think of monster effects like these as a button. During the main phase, when nothing is happening, also known as an open game state, you can press the button on your monster to activate its effect. There's a little bit of nuance when it comes to certain once per turn statements, but we'll talk about that in a different series. Trigger effects are effects that activate when a certain condition is met, and though they are also spell speed 1, these can generally happen during any phase of the game. These effects can be mandatory or optional, depending on the card. Most of the time, these effects are preceded by an if, or when, and may also have a timing-related condition, such as during the standby phase, or if this card is sent to the graveyard. You can consider these cards as a sort of plug looking for an outlet. Once the correct outlet is found by the card, it plugs in and starts working. It begins a new chain. Cards that use the word when can also miss their timing, but that will be explained at another time, no pun intended, in a different series. Continuous effects are ones that stay active as long as the monster is face up on the field, and have no spell speed, so therefore they do not start a chain link. These are pretty simple, and we can look at a card like YuGiOh as a prime example. These cards are like a generator, providing the effect in a constant stream until they are dealt with. Finally, we have quick effects, which are spell speed too. This means they can be activated at any point in the game in response to any effect that is not a counter trap card. Cards with these effects are always preceded by the phrase during either player's turn or with quick effect in parentheses. These are basically ignition effects that can be activated on the spot, even during a chain link. Still like a button, but fast like a bullet. There are other effects which I referred to as inherent effects, but these are numerous and can get complicated, so we'll explore them as well in a future series. That concludes the lesson on monster cards. This is probably sounding like a lot of information to take in, as some of these earlier videos will be, but keep in mind that these are important fundamentals and that it's not expected of you to instantly retain everything that we've talked about. But this is all necessary to know to really build a strong foundation in becoming a smart and strong duelist. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, click the like and subscribe button for more, and be sure to ding the notification bell so you'll know every time I upload a new video. Feel free to leave a comment or ask any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. But that's all for this lesson, so I'll catch you in the next one.